Hey, good afternoon, y'all. So this afternoon we're in Ezekiel chapter 32, and I hope you'll join me as we get started with the chambers for the priest. And we're talking about the temple in Jerusalem, the measuring of the city. So I hope you'll join me. Holy Spirit, you're welcome here. Chambers for the priest. Then the man led me out northward into the outer court, and he brought me to the group of chambers opposite to the temple courtyard, and the outer wall on the north side. The building with the door facing north was 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide. Gallery faced gallery in 3 levels opposite the 20 cubits that belonged to the inner court, and opposite the pavement that belonged to the outer court. In front of the chambers was an inner walkway 10 cubits wide and 100 cubits long. Their doors were on the north. Now the upper chambers were smaller because the galleries took more space from the chambers on the lower and the middle floors of the building, for they were arranged in 3 stories. And unlike the courtyards, they had no pillars, so the upper chambers were set back further than the lower and the middle floors. An outer wall in front of the chambers was 50 cubits long, and ran parallel to the chambers and the outer court. For the chambers on the outer court were 50 cubits long, while those facing the temple were 100 cubits long. And below these chambers were the entrance on the east side, as one enters them from the outer court. On the south side, along the level of the wall of the outer court, were chambers adjoining the courtyard and opposite to the building, with a passageway in front of them, just like the chambers that were on the north. They had the same length and width, with similar exits and dimensions, and corresponding to the doors of the chambers that were facing south. There was a door in front of the walkway that was parallel to the wall extending eastward. Then the man said to me, "The north and the south chambers facing the temple courtyard are the holy chambers where the priests who approach the Lord will eat the most holy offerings. There they will place the most holy offerings, the grain offerings, the sin offerings, the guilt offerings, for the place is holy. Once the priests have entered the holy area, they must not go out into the outer court until they have left behind the garments in which they minister, for these are holy." So they're supposed to take them out. So they're saying that the garments that they wear to minister in are different. They are to put on other clothes before they approach the places that are for the people. The outer measurements. Now, when the man had finished measuring the interior of the temple area, he had led me out by the gate that faced east, and he measured the area all around. With the measuring rod, he measured the east side to be 500 cubits long. He measured the north side to be 500 cubits long. He measured the south side to be 500 cubits long. And he came around and measured the west side to be 500 cubits long. So he measured the area on all 4 sides. It had a wall all around, 500 cubits long and 500 cubits wide, to separate the holy from the common. So notice here he's already separating, and this is in the Old Testament, or the Torah. This is where, you remember when they were preaching in the New Testament, they didn't have the New Testament yet. Paul stood in the synagogue and he preached out of the Torah, out of the Old Testament. And we're reminded that the Bible is alive, it's living. So it transcends time and space, right? History repeats itself. It continues on and on. And if we go back and we read through this, Jonathan Cahn, if you follow him, he's been kind of showing you through Ahab and Jezebel, and trying to think of the guy that they're trying to say reminds you of Trump, how he drained the swamp. Everything repeats itself, and God shows you how he works, what he does, and how he's going to fulfill the end. Everything repeats itself. The Bible is a fascinating thing, and I pray that you will do a deep dive and get in to your word and start reading. Draw close to the Lord and in a personal relationship, and allow him to speak to your heart personally. You know, some of these platforms eventually they're all going to go away. But if you're able to feed yourself, teach a man to fish and he will feed himself. But if you continuously fish for the man, he'll be starved to death. So I hope this helps you. I pray that you do a deep dive. I pray you have a very blessed day. Shalom.